Hello, good afternoon. Miss Ugochukwu.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How's yours?
Fine. How's the day been?
Um, I mean, it's all right.
Yeah, good. It's a wet afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for joining our
Yeah.
series.
It's fine.
So, yes, so in just a few minutes to start, maybe we'll wait for more delegates to join in before we commence.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mika.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good to know. You're welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar series. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so just wait for me to bit so that more delegates will be able to join before we start on for today.
Okay.
So maybe like five minutes should be fine. Yes, we can start. Okay, so I think we should start while others join along with. Is that fine?
Okay.
Great. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Untitled. I work with ASP Trainings Limited. I'll be your moderator for today. We want to appreciate everybody that has joined this platform. We appreciate the speakers and the delegates from board. ESP Trainings Limited, at ESP Trainings Limited, we provide continuous professional learning with courses and trainings across various areas of practice. Today's webinar, we've tagged has launched our webinar series as they are slated to hold 3 p.m. lunch hour break every Tuesday and Thursday, respectively. At every session, we will provide easy accessibility formats for everyone who is interested. And as we speak, they're also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. For today's webinar series, we have the topic we'll be handling today is enterprise risk management. And it's expected of the delegates at the end of today's webinar to understand how to assess the governance, risk management and compliance capability and maturity of their business. To understand how to implement enterprise GRC management. Also, they'll be able to learn how to stimulate improvements at each stage of the enterprise GRC management process. Assess and prioritize GRC to determine the contribution of each segment to the aggregate risk profile. Discover how to raise risk awareness and embed enterprise GRC thinking and practice. As we proceed, if any of the delegates have question and answer, you can feel free to drop it on the Q&A session while speakers answer your question later on. So our first speaker for today is Ms. Chigoziri Ugochukwu. She's the head institutional effective and compliance at Outsource Global. She'll be speaking on strategies for enterprise risk management. While our second speaker for today is Mr. Emeka Atuma. He's head ERM internal control of United Capital Group. He'll be speaking on effects of internal control system on risk management and enterprise risk management process. Now we'll make welcome Mrs. Chigoziri Ugochukwu to start with the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Like she said, my name is Chigoziri Ugochukwu, although everyone calls me Chichi. I'm the head of Institutional Effectiveness and Compliance at Outsource Global Technologies Limited. I know that my topic is strategy for a successful enterprise risk management program. But before we even go there, we need to actually talk about what risk management is, enterprise risk management, and how you can do that. I'll be sharing. Well, okay, I think the organizers have this covered. So first off, what is enterprise risk management? ERM is an organizational approach to managing potential threats that a company faces. This is effected by top-level management. Basically, it's just saying that, enterprise risk management cannot be done except you have your management involved. It's like basic risk management, but this time you are running it through your entire company with the support of your management. It's also applied in strategy settings and across your entire organization, designed to identify potential threats. Enterprise risk management basically says that you sit down, you look at your business operations. What are the threats to those businesses across all business units? And then what are potential risks that apply? They could be regulatory, they could even be personnel related, relating to your employees. It could be from management, it could be the technology that you employ. you have to identify everything that is involved in your business. That's why it's called enterprise risk management. Elements of this includes, okay, I'm going to share a slide with everyone so that everybody understands, so everyone can follow. Okay. Basic, okay, I think I should hold on a little bit before I continue.
No problem. I think you should get your slides together once I
Okay.
can view it and let you know.
All right.
So I can see your
Okay. Okay, you can see my screen now. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I said earlier that enterprise risk management is an organizational approach to managing potential threats that companies may face. This involves top-level decision-making regarding risk management, and it also allows for organizations to determine their risk position by ensuring proper consideration of all risks. Now, in basic risk management, you could just look at it from a certain angle. However, in enterprise risk management, you consider your business operations, you consider all business units. It could be from a technology angle, it could even be from corporate governance. How risky are the activities of top-level management? It could also be from employees. So yes, I mean, after you've done that, you then determine your risk position. Elements of enterprise risk management, one of it is corporate governance. And the reason we do this is because companies leverage their resources to gain and sustain a competitive advantage. In order for them to do that, they have to manage all risks and assess the implications of the internal and external threats and possibly convert them into opportunities. You know, when you do your SWOT analysis, you have your your strengths, your weaknesses, threats and opportunities. Your threats are your risks. Now, if you know what you're doing, you have to you find a way to convert your threats into opportunities in a way that benefits the business. For enterprise risk management to be effective, it has to be structured, systematic, across the organization. And one of the ways you can do that is through corporate governance. This is the establishment of rules, practices, processes, and procedures for the foundation of ERM. And then not just that, you also identify the responsibility for the application of corporate governance. And one of the questions you have to ask yourself as a management is, how can we integrate risk management into our business strategies and objectives? Another way we do that is through business planning. Now, when you're setting your objectives for the year as a company, you have to also assess the company's risk position by understanding the long-term impacts of threats. A risk is not a risk unless it has the potential to shut down your business, either permanently or for a long time. If it's something that can be fixed, say for instance, you have just something minor that can be fixed by anyone, you can't, it's not necessarily a risk, right? But if it has a long-term effect to shut down your operations, then you consider that as a risk. So you ask questions like, what is your risk appetite? By doing that, before you even do that, you also ask, what are your major risks? Are you taking in the right amount of risk? If you're not, you might need to, every company has to also on some level. So you have to consider that. Then when you determine what your major risks are, you then ask what your risk appetite is. Basically, what can you take and what can you not take? What kind of risks can you tolerate? If you lose this amount of money, at what point do you say, okay, this is a problem for us? Is it 1 million? If you lose 1 million as a business, is it something that you can say, okay, it's not that bad, we can write it off? If you lose 10 million, we cannot write it off because it will affect our bottom level. Then you do have your risk assessment. This is where you evaluate risks from a strategic standpoint, and then they are also prioritized based on their severity. So at this point, you're saying, what are our business risks? You list them in order of priority as they pertain to your business, and how severe are those risks? This is where also your risk appetite comes in. How can you rate them on level? And how do you do that? You look at your impact and probability level, the impact of it and the likelihood of that happening. If it's high, then that's how you know that the risk is severe. If it's not high, maybe it's not so severe and you can easily treat that. One thing I need to notice that your risk must cover everything. You need to cover your business processes, technology, operational, even branding and reputational, asset risk, depreciation value of all your assets. If you have an asset risk, that's a problem for you. Then you also you also need to reflect on your risk assessment process. How effective is the process of identifying, accessing, and managing the risk? If it's not effective enough, go back to the drawing board and create a standard process, document that process as well. Internal controls, how do you respond to the risks that you raise? After you respond, what are the controls that you put in place? Are you accepting, avoiding, reducing, or transferring your risk? Internal controls ensure the provision of assurance for operational efficiency, and they also help you compliant with laws and internal policies. I know that, why do we have enterprise risk management? It helps you build operational resilience. If you're able to identify potential threats to your business, then you can set up controls to ensure business continuity. No one sets up a company for it to given with a timeline. The reason you set up companies is so that they can run perpetually. Now you identify your risks so that you can set up controls to ensure that your business continues to run. ERM also helps you make better decisions as a management, because you are aware of all the risks in every decision that you're about to make. It helps you become strategic because you're able to monitor and evaluate changes to your internal and external environment to ensure compliance. ERM also helps to improve value creation by ensuring improved performance enhancements. You're able to because you've been able to identify your risks, set up controls. You're also able to set KPIs for each risk owner, because that is what their job is, to manage that risk. And once you do that, you're able to set up KPIs that everyone that you can then judge or appraise them by. Risks also help in the overall management of the company's resources for efficient use. This just means that you're able to improve your cost effectiveness and increase depreciation of your assets or resources. Now to the main topic, strategies for implementing a successful enterprise risk management program. As a risk manager, it is your responsibility to ensure that the successful implementation throughout the company. One of the ways that you do that is to obtain management buy-in. You need to engage top management for their support. This helps in defining the risk management framework that you're going to apply and integrate it into your goal setting objectives. What is a risk management framework? It's basically the guideline. In enterprise risk management, we have two frameworks. We have the COSO and the ISO. You decide based on the risk that you have identified, or how you want to be able to manage your risk. You decide which of the frameworks that you want to follow. And then you align, you define your company's risk maturity level. How do you do this? You ask questions like, how aware is everyone in the company about risk? If everyone in your company, even to the cleaner or the janitor rather, if everyone is aware of what risk is and the risks to the company by virtue of their job functions, it means that your maturity level is high. However, if it's just top management and maybe mid-level management, then it means that it's not bad. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it just means that your risk level, maturity level is not that high. However, that's able to put things in perspective for you as a company. That also helps you manage risks and how you're able to do your constant information and communication to employees. Then you adopt a framework. Like I said earlier, there are two frameworks that we use in enterprise risk management. It could be ISO. ISO basically just starts your risk process from the purpose and scope of your risk management activities. However, COSO reviews your strategy, your operations, and then aligns risks to each of them. So if how COSO works is ISO just, okay, what is the risk for the entire company? And then we apply risks to them. However, COSO says this HR department, what are the risks involved in each operation that they undertake? So COSO is a little bit more in-depth. ISO is a little bit more popular because it's something that you look at it from a strategic standpoint and you just say, okay, how does this affect our business operations? And then you just take it over. It doesn't go in depth as to how each person's work affects the business. Okay, so I forgot to say something. So I had said that we have two frameworks. However, we have a lot more than that. ISO and COSO are just the more popular ones. Then you continuously perform risk assessments. This means just you identify all potential risks, examine the inherent and residual risk using your likelihood and impact before and after applying your controls. An inherent risk is the risk that occurs just as is. What is it? You identify it. What is the impact on your business? You multiply your impact and the likelihood, and that's how you get a risk figure, your risk level rather. A residual risk is saying, okay, if our risk level is 25 for a particular thing or a particular objective, and then you apply your control. Does it reduce it? If it doesn't reduce it, then you need to work on that control. If it does reduce it, you test the control again to see if you can further reduce it. That's how you perform risk assessments. Then you document your risk responses and internal controls. Again, documentation is everything in risk management. You cannot perform enterprise risk. You can't have an enterprise risk management program without a risk register. because that risk register helps you monitor your internal controls for effectiveness. Because what worked, if an internal control has worked for you this year, if you perform another risk management, risk assessment rather, it probably will not work, or it could, but that's why you monitor every time, every year, or depending on what the decision is by management. And then you ensure a periodic review of risks. By this, you just basically, you look at the changes in risk management. If you've changed risk owners, review the risk. If it's, take for instance, you have a key man risk in a particular department, and then the control was to ensure succession planning. If the head of that department has moved on, and you bring in another person, you look at it again. Do we still have that issue in that department, or this has been solved? You look at your business objectives and the risks, the systems, what has changed, your processes, what has changed. You continue to monitor on the purpose of your risk management. You cannot always eliminate risks. The idea is for you to manage it properly. And then I'm rounding up now. So final words, really, enterprise risk management is management process based on an integrated and continuous approach. For this, you have to consider all facets of the business, assess them for risks. ERM is based on understanding the independencies across risks and implementing your integrated strategies. You have to consider everything, or everything. Look, people, enterprise risk management is not a joke. You have to ensure that you consider all your risks and look at ways that you apply strategies to them. What works? If it doesn't work, you try something else. You continue to tweak and tweak and tweak until you're able to effectively manage those risks. You don't want something to spring out and then you have a business disruption. Risk management, like I said, is part of business continuity. The goal is to always minimize unexpected performance variance while maximizing intrinsic value. You identify your risk drivers and implement a systemic process to manage your drivers. Inventory your risks using a risk register. Document, and then you build a risk culture, because it's not enough that you have that management is aware of the risks that are associated with your company. You need to do constant monitoring and communication, however works for you as a company. Communicate potential risks, but let everyone in the company understand how what they do affects the overall goals of the business. Implementing ERM just supports sound business decision levels across the company, so that everyone, including the janitor, they know that if I don't do this, this happens. This has a possibility of affecting business. This helps for, this actually helps in performance management, because if I'm able to do my job knowing that not doing this or doing this could have a likely impact on the overall business, and I need to do that job, but do it properly to still have a job. I mean, it means that everyone will be putting their best in the business so that everyone can have the desired results. I think I'm done here for now, at least until I have other final words. Thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate that session. More understanding about how to
I'm sorry, I don't think I got that.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I think it's because of the rain, but I'll try to
Oh, okay. I think I can hear you now.
I want to Thank you so much. So we will have our second speaker for today, Mr. Emeka Atuma. As I said earlier on, he is FERM, International Control of United Capital Group. He will be speaking on the effects of internal control system on risk management and enterprise risk management process. Thank you, Mr. Emeka.
Okay. Good afternoon, panelists and attendees. As rightly stated, my name is Emeka Atuma. I manage with other colleagues the enterprise risk management department of United Capital. And we cover financial risk management, operational risk, strategic, internal control, business process, and information security. So my slides are not completely ready, but I will display something so that we can follow through. I hope to complete it and send to ESQ. I didn't want to, because of time, I wanted them to be excused, but I looked at it and said it's also an opportunity to let upcoming colleagues understand what we are doing and also strengthen the risk management profession. So I'll quickly start. I'm speaking on effect of internal control on enterprise risk management process. Chichi has done justice to some of the things I would have loved to say, but I will jump right into it. Never mind, the slide I will be sending won't have United Capital on it. Is because I was using my United Capital system. That's why, because the PowerPoint has been coded to have United Capital, but I will get it resolved. So the first thing is internal control as a system. You know, when in my early professional career, I was taught of system, and I've had issues in the places that I have worked, the difference between internal control as a function and internal control as a system. So when something goes wrong, most times you hear people say, is the internal control function? I said, no. Did internal control sign? Did they verify? Did they do all that they are supposed to do? Then if they have done that, then it is not internal control function. It's the internal control system that failed. And when the system is failing, then you have a problem. So I would like to speak to us. This is what I got from Investopedia. He said, internal control as a system is a mechanisms, rules, and procedures implemented by a company to ensure the integrity of financial and accounting information, promote accountability, and prevent fraud. For those of us who are old in the business world, or those of us who are accountants, this speaks more to accounting, but a bit of operational risk management. So this definition is very limited. That's the first thing I identified on this, is very limited, because enterprise risk, which covers a lot, operational risk, of which the drivers are people, systems, external events, processes, legal, some will add reputation, strategic risk, and co, is more than just accounting information. Then we also have market risk, we have credit risk, you know, we have whole lot. We have asset and liability management. We have liquidity risk. We also have funding risk, you know. So all this risk and the controls that are put in place are not for financial and accounting information, promoting accountability and prevent fraud alone. And that is why when you speak to an accountant, this is the kind of thing you will hear: financial control around accounting information. So like I said in the third bullet point, when you compare what goes on in an institution, it is more than that definition. For instance, I think Chigozrim alluded to something of this nature: key man risk. If you want to employ a staff, you do a background check. That's a control. That has nothing to do with financial and accounting information. Though that background check can indirectly help you promote accountability and prevent fraud indirectly, but it's more than MECA checker, like we know, segregation of duties. So some of the, you know, when we were writing ICANN in early 2000, we were taught something like black box audit and white box audit, input, output, and what goes on in the control flows and other things. Now, there are more to that. If for those of us who have attempted to do something like information security, there is more to that when it comes to securities that are implemented in information system. They are more than accounting information and promote accountability. Though some will argue that indirectly, what you're trying to do is to protect financial and accounting information, the integrity of financial accuracy and co. But sometimes they are more than that. Denial of service. You may not, the person may not want to commit fraud, but it just don't want you to do any business for that day. Ransomware, it doesn't want to commit fraud in your system. It just kidnapped your system. It's not stopping you from promoting accountability. It's not disrupting your accounting information. Everything is intact, but it will just kidnap your system, kidnap your data, and ask you to pay money. But there are controls that have been instituted in recent times. So that is why this topic is very, very important. A system of internal control. What is the effect on enterprise risk management? So business continuity management, which is now called business resilience. That is your ability to continue to offer your services and your product in the event that there is a disaster or there is a problem in your main office. It is control. This business continuity management, some call it business continuity plan. You know, a plan not implemented is just a piece of paper. So I prefer to call it management because it has gone above planning. You are now implementing, you are now managing. So like I stated before, most operational risk events were not represented in the definition, and I've tried to allude to that as I was speaking. So for me, this definition from Investopedia is looking at the old way of defining internal control. Is not doing justice to internal control definition. Next slide. Now, this is the definition by COSO. COSO means the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Tradeway Commission. Chigozrim also mentioned this committee. They define internal control as a broadly process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in the following categories: effectiveness and efficiency of operations, reliability of financial reporting, compliance with applicable laws and regulations. That is what internal control is meant to do. They brought in reliability of financial reporting. And why is this financial reporting important? It's important because that is one of the best way companies state to the world what the economic reality of the business is in numbers. So if you cannot rely on the financial reporting that is coming out from a company, then it will be difficult to do business with that company. So that means it is not GAAP compliant, generally acceptable accounting principle compliant, and the financial report is not reliable. Now, effectiveness and efficiency, using leadership words, effectiveness means doing the right thing. Efficiency is doing things right. But in business, effectiveness is more of, yes, doing the right thing. Efficiency is doing the right thing in a cost-effective way. So when you put internal controls in place, for instance, you are in a business where costs is going up, but revenue is not going up as much as possible. You put internal controls around cost management. What you're trying to do is to minimize your cost and maximize your income, because two of them are contrary to each other. So, and if you don't put internal controls in place, you will discover that, hey, though you are not making so much money, but you are spending more than you are making, especially in an inflationary environment like ours. So COSO has given us a broader internal control definition, also maintaining one of the objectives of the first definition, which is reliability of financial reporting. Internal control systems enables us to comply with applicable laws and regulation. The next slide looks at COSO's internal control model. COSO has internal control model. Chigozrim mentioned the model on enterprise risk, but this is the internal control model, which is first the control environment, risk assessment, control activity, information and communication is very, very important. Those of us who are at management level knows that in a place where there is no enough communication, different people will do things differently, and it will affect the brand of the company. For instance, in some companies, they would have said the size of the funds that is going out must not be more than 11. It should be Calibri or Central Gothic or whatever. If this is not properly communicated and monitored, then you will discover that when letters go out of the company, there will be different funds and different fund size and types of funds. So control activities, select and develop control activities, select and develop general controls over technology, deploy through policies and procedures. If you check the definitions here, processes, which includes policies and procedures. Here, what it means is that your control need to be fused into policies and procedures. And for those who may not know and those who know, policies like management in management is defined as general guidance to management decision making. It's not a rule per se, it's a general guidance. So it guides you in decision making. It's not a rule. Procedures indicate the different steps that you take in order to achieve a particular objective or goal. Now, okay, I've tried to explain this. Control environments include values and culture, tone at the top, policies and organizational structure, Risk assessment includes risk identification, measurement, and responses to threats. Control activities involve procedures followed for a control purpose. Information and communication involves reliability, timeliness, clarity, usefulness of information, and methods adopted. Monitoring involves review of internal control arrangements. That means you must monitor. So these 5 control objectives, that's what is explained here. So we're going to the COSO model, linking risk and control. Now, this is COSO's definition of enterprise risk. It says is a process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel, applied in strategy setting and across the enterprise, designed to identify potential events that may affect the entity and manage risk to be within its risk appetite, to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of entity's objectives. I've taken time to read this. If you go back here, you discover that there is a difference. This one gives reasonable assurance regarding achievement of objectives. But this one is broader because when we will get to the point of looking at enterprise risk and the process and where control comes in, you will see why they have integrated the risk management process and enterprise risk. Now, I think this is their 2013 model for enterprise risk management. Now you can see objective setting. It is expected that businesses set their SMART objectives at the beginning of the year. Now, when you set those objectives, you would have said, this is the business that we can do. We will not do this business. This is our risk appetite. And what is this risk appetite? That is the amount of risk you are willing to take in order to achieve your objectives. So when you set those objectives, which must be simple, measurable, reliable, timely, and relevant. When you set this objective, the next thing to do is to ask yourself, what are the events? You know, the problem we've had in risk world is that people don't understand what risk means. Most people, or some people, especially some of them who are in the position of authority. So when you tell them, okay, you said you are going to you made 500 million last year. This year you say you will make 1 billion. Can you please let me know the events that you think can stop you from making the 1 billion this year? The next thing you will hear is that you are the risk manager. Go and do the risk and let me know. I begin to wonder, you are the one that understands your business very well. I'm not the one that does the business with you. Why will you not be able to sit down and ask yourself pertinent questions? What could go wrong? List all those things that could go wrong. Then move into assessment. How do you want to respond? I think Chigozrim's discussion was centered around response. So what controls do you want to put in place? How do you communicate? How do you monitor? So from control perspective, policies and procedures to ensure management directives are carried out effectively, approvals and authorizations, verification and reconciliation, review of operations, security of assets, segregation of duties, This is more of accounting control. This does not cover all risk management controls. Like I stated before, background check, where does it fall in here? Securities around programs in this that runs the system, where does it fall in here? There's a lot of risk that these controls were not enough. It's not all risk that requires approvals and authorization. So what am I saying? These controls as listed here is mostly towards accounting controls. Now, the next slide speaks to ISO 31000 model. ISO 31000 model says you should establish the context, the scope. How far is this your risk management going to go? Do your risk identification. Do your analysis. Do your risk evaluation. Treat this risk. Treating this risk is the control. Monitor and review. Communicate and consult. So, okay, this is communicate and consult first. So that's why, you know, because of the different level of knowledge that we have in the system, you speak to, first of all, speak to the board, speak to executive management, speak to senior management, business leaders, heads of departments, and if possible, do a workshop for the whole, for everyone. But the way we have tried to cover all this is, after speaking to management and the board and speaking to business leaders, we request that risk champions be nominated in each of the businesses and the departments. So what it means is that this risk champion will be trained on risk management process. Then they will in turn train other people. So that's the way we've tried to manage, because it may be difficult to get everybody and in the same at the same speed. So managing it is to nominate, is to ask the businesses and the departments to nominate the risk champions. So this is the COSO, this is the ISO model. The ISO model is slightly different from the COSO model, but they are not far. For instance, though COSO doesn't have communicate, but in the process of objective setting, this communication can take place at the senior management level. Establishing the context is more like also during the process of objective setting, where you say, this is the kind of business we will do this year. This is the revenue that we are looking at. This is the number of people we employ this year. This is what we think the economy will be doing. We are going to expand our businesses outside Nigeria to other places, or outside Lagos to other places. What are the different risks? For instance, from the Southeast, they have their own peculiar problems, though not all the Southeast. Enugu is peaceful. Abia State is relatively peaceful. Ebonyi State, same. So you may decide to say, though your business is more in Anambra and Imo State, but because of the security issues, I will move it to Enugu. I will move then I will be shuttling between Enugu and Anambra State. So that is establishing the context. So my last slide is to look at the process of risk management. I've actually spoken to a lot of it. This model is what I use to run enterprise risk management in every organization that I go. I I looked at the COSO and I looked at the ISO model. Then I came up with this. They are almost the same thing. I've explained establishing the context. Risk identification. I would like us to be clear on this. Risk identification means events. You need to identify the respective events that when they occur, they will affect you negatively or positively. For instance, do you need to recruit a first-class rookie in a new business, or you go and recruit an experienced person with second-class lower in that same business? It's a decision. So the risk there could be, yes, this guy doesn't have the level of academic prowess that I need, but this guy has the experience. This lady has the experience. The other person doesn't have the experience, but can theoretically help. So you decide, in the event that you pick this one, what are the risks? What are the controls you have in place? In the event that you pick the other person, what do you do? So risk is an event that when they occur, what are you going to do? And I would like to let us know that there is a difference between risk management and control. Control looks at the past, analyzes the past. Risk looks at the future. Like one of the American presidents said, risk is like fire. If you don't put it out, it will consume you. But if you manage it properly, it will help you. I hope we understand that. So, and according to the Bible also, he said a wise man is the person that sees trouble ahead and takes cover. That means risk always looks ahead and control looks at the past. So we must be able to differentiate risk events and control activities. Risk drivers. Why it is important to use risk drivers is that you actually know what is causing the problem. You know, risk is in two forms. There is the likelihood and there is the impact. So if you understand the risk drivers of the event that you have identified, you will know which one are you pursuing. Are you pursuing risk? Are you pursuing reducing likelihood, or are you pursuing reducing the impact? So when you know this, it's easier to put controls in place. The assessment, like I mentioned, can be quantification. For instance, you can compute the beta of your stock. You can do cash flow at risk. You can do value at risk. These are quantitative risk assessments. Then the qualitative risk assessment are things like frequency of occurrence, probability of occurrence, likelihood, and impact. So when you do your risk assessment, you are able to quantify the risk. I must be honest with you, the reason why risk management is not properly done here is that it's not being quantified. We treat risk as a qualitative function. Risk is more of a quantitative function because you need data to be able to quantify the risk. Now, risk mitigation, treatment/response. Now, what this means is that to mitigate risk, this is where control comes in. You look at the risk, then you look at the controls. Controls are divided into three, which are: one, preventive controls. Preventive controls are the costliest. Then there is detective and there is corrective. But the most important thing in implementing control is cost-benefit analysis. Why should you buy a Rolls Royce to protect a beetle? Why? So you must do a cost-benefit analysis, and that's where risk response comes in, where you determine the level of risk that you can accept, the level of risk that you will tolerate, the level of risk that you will avoid, and the kind of risk that you will share. Those are risk strategy. I think Chigozrim has spoken about that. So when you are implementing your risk, when you are implementing your risk mitigation, which is the control, a lot needs to go in. Now you assess your risk, you assess your controls by evaluating whether the control is satisfactory, whether it is over control, or the control is not working. Then for risk management, all the things we have done between establishing the context, identification, drivers, assessment, and mitigation is around the inherent risk. Inherent risk are the risk that is in what you want to do. Then after you implement the controls, you now talk of the residual risk. Residual risk is the risk that is remaining after controls have been put in place. So you need to also assess the balance risk, whether whether they are extreme, whether they are unacceptable, whether they are tolerable, or whether they are acceptable. What it means is that if the residual risk is extreme, you would decide how much will it cost me to bring it down to my risk appetite. If the cost is high, you will go back and say, I will not do this business. Then if it is unacceptable and you need to put more controls in place, and if the controls is costly and you don't have that money to allocate to such controls, you go back again and say, I will not do this business. So at every point in time, you want to reduce your residual risk to tolerable and acceptable so that you are able to do the business and make profits. But if you decide that you want to do the business, even when the residual risk is extreme, then you have to live with the consequences. So action allocation is after you have done everything, who and who is going to monitor, who and who is going to implement those actions, which are the risk, which are the controls that you have implemented, then monitoring and reporting. So with all this that I have said, going back to the topic, effect. So what effect does control have on enterprise risk? The effect that control has on enterprise risk management or enterprise risk process is that, one, without the control implementation, you cannot reduce your risk. Two, it also increases the enterprise risk management process. Three, it is an important aspect of the risk management processes. Four, it helps you to achieve the goals that was stated, which is ability to have a financial reporting that you can trust. So the effect is sometimes it's not quantifiable until something goes wrong. Sometimes you discover that, okay, two people are supposed to be doing a job. Then you do a risk assessment and say, oh, there's a key man risk in this department. Oh, there's a key man risk in this department. Then you go to management and board of directors and say, we need to get one more person in this department so that we can reduce it. They will tell you, no. I think Emeka is capable. You don't need another person. The cost of bringing in another person is this, that. 2 months down the line, Emeka has put in paper and is resigning. Sometimes that the company suffers for that business, for the action of not putting controls in place. So controls are important in the risk management process, and it is something that we should always advise the owners of the businesses to put controls in place. This line says a failure to have internal control in place results in a front page news stories that no company wants to be part of. Enron and WorldCom. Enron, WorldCom, and Equifax are a few examples of organizations organizations that made news headlines due to lack of internal control. Sometimes the internal controls are there, but management override is too much. Similarly, there are dozens of cases each year of companies who privately lose millions due to control failures, fraud, and misconduct. Now, if you read the news recently, I understand banks are finding it difficult to retain talent. Why? Because of, one of them is because of immigration issues. Two is the business dynamics. The dynamics of business in the banking industry is changing. Now, telecoms have been called in to be part of banking process. The fintechs are there. So if you look at all this, any bank that did not do something now may find it difficult to retain talent and make profit. And the reason is simple. The banks are heavy in the back end because they have implemented a lot of infrastructure that they cannot easily dismantle. Meanwhile, all these fintechs, they don't have any legacy issue. It's easy for them to adapt and move on. So for risk managers that are listening to me, it's important to establish a process of risk management and ensure controls are implemented, cost-effective controls are implemented, they are monitored, and they are reported on so that your businesses can last for long. Another control which we don't always speak about is the business continuity control, which helps you to be resilient. For instance, you go to some companies, is only that computer department that they have in their head office. The day there is fire in that area or a huge flood or a pandemic or an endemic, nobody will have access to that office. They will be out of business for that day. So it's important that we consider that. Again, issues of strategic risk. We can see how inflation is galloping. We can see how interest rates is trending up. We can see how, though the GDP is growing, but we can see changes in technology. These are issues that affect the strategic risk, and these things should be properly identified, assessed, and mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emeka. That was very nice. Explanation. Thank you so much for time. And also to our first speaker, Mrs. Chigozin, I appreciate you so much. Okay, so to our attendees, this is your time to ask our speakers any questions that might have been bothering you in regards to risk management. Please, you have the opportunity of asking. Does anyone have a question or two to ask our delegates, our speakers, before they leave? Mr. Charles, okay. Someone just dropped the question. I'll read that out. As an investor who wants to invest in a new firm or company, what are you expected to consider in regards to the risk of the startup?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I was trying to type a response, but again, I've seen the question. For me, you know, It
Can
depends.
you hear me, sir?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
I believe we can hear you, Mr. Emeka.
Okay, thank you. So I'm saying that if you want to invest in a startup, what you should first of all do is you need to do more of qualitative review. Who are the promoters of the business? Is very important. What do you know about them? The second thing I think you should also look out for are the management, those who are going to run the business. Have they done any business before? How successful were they? Then the next thing is, can you lay your hands on their projected financials like income and income and the balance sheet? You must bear in mind that they may not be making profit in the first 2-3 years, but is there a prospect? Which side of the economy are they going into? How viable is that area of the economy? Then you can also, now it boils down to the money you have. Your age should be important to you. If you are quite young and you want to allocate certain size of your money to risky assets, you can allocate such risk, I call it risk capital, into the business and try as much as possible to monitor it. Again, also their products, from your experience, the product or service that they want to offer, are people looking for that product? So you need to do those kind of analysis then before you invest, because you don't need to throw your money away because you want to make huge returns. So it's important that you do some of those qualitative analysis before you put your money in such businesses. I hope that helps.
And just to add to what,
Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
yes, and just to add to what he said, one of the things you have to look out for is that a lot of these startups tend to raise their evaluation numbers very high. And so, I mean, you do that, you put your money in, and then you realize that you overpaid, because that's what it is, you overinvested in the company. So you need to also find a way to you need to evaluate that valuation. How is it? Is it priced too high? Is it priced too low? Can you get another thing is, can you get your money back? Like you said, you need to look at their business. What have they done? What are their numbers? How true are their numbers? Have they cooked their books? If they say this is how much they've made, did they actually make that money? Their projected revenue, could they have lifted the numbers a little too high? I mean, when you're trying to invest in a startup, you're going to have to do due diligence. To be honest, it's very hard work, but this is money we're talking about here. So you have to do what you have to do just to make sure that you cover all your bases. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that addition. So the second question is what should I use counsel over ISO and vis-a-vis? Or why should I? Sorry about that. Did you get the question, sir?
Okay, yes. For me, I think Chigozrim gave a clue on the core concepts on both. Like I said before, in COSO is more operational, because it starts from the day you are setting up your objective. what you start talking about what could go wrong. I use that a lot, especially in United Capital. After the strategy, I will circulate a template and ask the businesses and the departments, these are the things you say you are going to do this year. Can you identify what could go wrong? So that's for that. Then for ISO is a bit technical in the sense that if you don't have experience establishing context may be a problem. And you may establish a context that is too wide and you can't meet up, or a small context that does not cover all your businesses. So for me, if you are starting newly, I think you should go for COSO, because though they were in internal control before, but now they have included enterprise risk. So you start from risk assessment. Most companies use COSO. Then as you grow, you can see, you look at how to bring in ISO into the model. So that would be my advice for that. So for somebody who is just starting, start with COSO, because definitely, even if you are not the one that attends the strategy meeting, somebody in your team will attend the strategy meeting. All you need to do is, okay, what are the objectives for this year? Can you identify the events that could go wrong? So let's assess it. What is the likelihood? What is the impact? If it is those of us who are in investment bank, we can run the value at risk. We can run the cash flow at risk. We can do stress tests, sensitivity analysis to come up with something. Then the next thing is, okay, you start talking about the risk appetite. How much risk are we willing to take? How much are we willing to lose to be able to do this business? So it's easier to operationalize COSO than ISO. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I don't know, Miss, do you have addition to, you want to say something?
No, I don't. He basically covered exactly what I was going to say.
All right. Thank
However,
sorry?
I was going to say that, however, at Autos Global, we use ISO because we've evolved past, we started with COSO, but we've evolved past that, and we've been able to establish the context of our organization, and then, run our risk management process from there.
Thank you very much. So I think the last question now is, as an intending business owner, what are the things to be considered as risk factors?
Okay. I'll speak in the Nigerian context. Before you look at your finances, I would say the first thing you should look at is the regulatory risk. How is your business covered by regulations? Considering that regulations in Nigeria tend to be a little bit ambiguous, or they're forever changing. You need to consider that. Is this something, could it be something that is subject to that risk? Then before you look at your finances and see whether the money that whether you're even going to break even to start with, before you talk about making a profit. Are you going to break even? Are you going to make your capital before you then say, okay, I'm able to make a profit? And then the strategy behind your business, that's a risk for you to consider. The tools you're going to use to run your business, that's another risk you consider. Your business processes, that's a risk. What processes would you employ? We advise all the time that you don't need to be a big company for you to run a risk assessment. You can even start, even before you can run a risk assessment for your business, even before you start. That gives you an idea on, on drawing up your strategy map, your strategy roadmap for how you want to run your business. Then you look at your markets. How viable is your market? Do you think your whatever it is you're selling, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, do you have a market for it? You don't want to put something out there in the market and then, you know, it's not well received. There's also the competitive risk. This is where you do your SWOT analysis. Do you have competitors? Who are they? What's the thing that gives you a competitive edge? Remember, I said earlier that risk management gives you a competitive edge, you know, above your competitors. It gives you a competitive advantage. So you consider that, what's the one up you have? If you don't have any, it's time to think of something you can implement above that, you know, will give you that edge above your competitors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I don't know, Mr. Emeka, do you have any?
Okay, I think Ms. Chigozrim has spoken widely. For me, if you want to start up a business, the first thing is, you know, based on experience, I have discovered that most businesses don't start from a risk assessment or what could go wrong. They start more from the numbers that is on their head that they want to generate. So, towing that line, I will advise that you first of all look at the service and the products that you want to offer. I think Ms. Chigozum said that. How acceptable are those products? Who are the competitors? Where are you in the value chain? What do you want to do differently? How are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to sell the service or the product? Where is your market? In fact, I've always had problem with my wife when she comes and say, honey, I want to do this. I'll ask her, who are your customers? Who are your customers? She will say, Don, what are you talking about? Those who are selling in their booths, do they identify their customers? I say, you don't know. So who are your customers? Where are they? Because you cannot be, if you are a financial person, anytime you open the financials of companies like Flour Mills, Dangote Cement, Dangote Sugar, you will see how much they spend on distribution of their goods, because they are manufacturing far from the location where the goods are needed. But they cannot open factories in those areas where goods are needed. So sales and distribution expense is a chunk of that. So is that what you want to do? So when you finish that and you tick all the boxes and you are okay, you don't need to be 100%. You don't need to be 100%. If you have score of 80 to 90, even 75, then the next thing is your business model. It's important to understand this business model is like a chart. The source of your revenue, your distributors, the way you want to distribute, the capital, everything in that business model, you're able to see at once where could problem be. Again, I will advise you, before you go on, ask yourself, based on this thing that I have done, do I have biases? Did I tick that, oh, there are 1 million customers when they are just 100,000? Am I trying to get money from friends and family, even when I know that this will not work? So you have to be truthful to yourself first. Then with like we'll call it in risk management, deviation of, let's say, 10% positive, negative, then you are sure. Then you can now start thinking of capital. Where do I get capital and how do I go? Because you need to sell these ideas and you need to project your revenue expectations. You need to project that. Ms. Chigozrim mentioned something on valuation. To be honest, the way they value those businesses are not the normal way that we value. Some value based on expected customers that have not even joined. So if you expect that your customer is going to increase from 100,000 to 1 million, you just extrapolate the figure and you add it. And when you do that, you discover that your valuation is high, but people still give them money. So, but you need to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was really on another level, really. That was very, very good. Thank you so much for answering the questions. Thank you, Ms. Chigozure. They add institutional effectiveness and compliance at Outsource Global. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time for taking today's webinar. Also, Mr.
Thank you for
Emeka
having me.
Atuma is the head ERM International Control of United Capital Group. Thank you so much, sir, for it.
Thank
So
you.
I want to appreciate all. Yes, sir. I want to appreciate the attendees for taking out time to be a part of today's webinar. Thank you so much. And I would like to mention again that for a rewatch of our webinar, and if you also want to do a catch up on the previous webinars, you can go to our YouTube channel at My ESK Legal. Then also, I'd like to remind us that for subsequent webinars, you can join us Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. respectively. Thank you so much, everybody. And before we wrap up, we'd like to say a very big thank you to all our sponsors: ALP, African Law Practice, Bloomfield Law Practice, the New Practice, GOA, Farmsville Solicitor. We appreciate you all. Thank you for making today's webinar a success. Do enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a lovely
Thank you,
evening.
sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy the
too.
rest of your
Thank
day.
you very much. You too. Bye.
Bye.